Hello and welcome to this build tutorial of the Quest Astra rocket. In this video, we are going to assemble the entire rocket from start to finish. Let's begin with punching the fins out of the fin stock. Be careful not to break the fins while punching them out of the fin stock, and if necessary, go ahead and flip the fin stock over to the back side and score the lines where you can see it's already been cut with a hobby knife, or sand down that area with sandpaper to make them easier to remove. Next, we are going to do a test fit of the different parts. So I drew this little schematic so we could see how all the parts are supposed to fit together. One of the unique design features of this rocket is the through-the-wall fin design, which we just saw in the schematic. Through the wall means that the fin is mounted to both the wall of the body tube and the motor mount tube, and not just the body tube itself. This is a stronger design than a surface mounted fin, which you normally see on smaller rockets, because with a surface mounted fin that does not go through the wall, if the fin is exposed to a high load during transport or on landing, the body tube can unwind with the fin attached to it. But if the fin is through the wall and attached to both the motor tube and the body tube, this is way less likely to happen, and the result is a much stronger rocket. Let's take a closer look. So here are some schematics that are going to display the different glue joints on this through-the-wall fin design. The first is the glue joint between the fin and the wall of the body tube, which is the joint you have with traditional surface-mounted fin rockets. The second is the glue joint between the fin and the motor tube. And the third is the glue joint between the fin and the centering ring. So with that, we can see why the through-the-wall fin design is much stronger than the traditional surface mount design used on smaller rockets, and is the reason why most, if not all, high-power rockets use some sort of through-the-wall fin design. The only exception is really minimum diameter high-power rockets. So catching back up with the actual build video, what we've been watching me do is increase the size of the fin slots with a hobby knife. I thought the slot sizes were a little bit too small. I also thought the inside diameter of the centering rings was too small, so I increased the size of those with the nose cone, as you see here. Next, we test fit the Q-Jet rocket motor inside the motor tube assembly and make sure it fits well. And I'm marking the location for the centering rings on the motor tube. Do not forget to install your shock cord to the motor mount assembly. And now I am gluing the centering rings on with wood glue. Be careful not to use too much wood glue because some of it might get on the inside the motor mount tube, which you don't want because that could prevent you from being able to get the motor in. And now we are gluing in the motor block to the top of the motor mount assembly, which keeps your motor in place, or should I say prevents your motor from shooting through your rocket. And you want to make sure this joint is strong because the Quest Q-Jets can have some relatively high thrust off the pad, which we look forward to flying in this rocket. Here we go with sanding the root edge surfaces of the fins. I say root edge surfaces because each fin has two root edges because it's being bonded to both the body tube and the motor mount tube. And we want to keep these as flat as possible to maximize the contact we have with the tubes so we get the strongest joint that we can. I like to scuff up the body tube a little bit where the fins are going to be bonded to it. Also scuff up the area where the launch lug will be placed and draw a straight line to help with making sure the launch lug is on straight when you go to glue it on. What I'm doing here is putting a layer of wood glue on the root edge surfaces of each fin and letting it dry. The reason I do this is because the glue has a tendency to seep into the fin, and when I'm going to bond the fin to the tube, I want the glue to actually be used for adhering the fin to the tube, not just seeping into the wood, and adding this first layer on helps with that. For good measure, I do the same thing to the tube. Here I am adding some more wood glue to the centering rings, or should I say the joint between the centering ring and motor tube for strength. Here I'm tracing the fins onto a piece of paper, and so what I'm going to do is put a piece of paper, glue a piece of paper onto the side of each fin. And I do this to help protect the fins, and also because the paper provides a smooth surface, or should I say a surface that is smoother than the wood, and prevents me from having to add some sort of sanding sealer to get a smooth surface. And this really helps with applying the stickers, which we will see later. And now I am gluing the motor mount assembly into the body tube. Be careful here not to get glue inside the motor mount tube and to not glue the fin slots shut. You want to make sure you can still install your fins. I glue the paper to the fins with Elmer's glue wall. Okay, let's glue the fins on. Notice that I gave the glue a little bit of time to start drying before I actually applied the fins to the rocket. And now I apply some fillets. And now it's time to glue the launch lug on. Make sure when you glue the launch lug on that you take a look at it from multiple different angles to make sure that the axis of the launch lug is parallel with the axis of the body hoop. Next, apply fillets to the launch lug. Here I put some glue over the edges of the fins for protection. I scuff up the nose cone just a little bit to get it ready for paint. Here's the spray paint I used. What I did was spray paint the cone blue and one of the fins blue, and also got a little bit of the blue paint on some of the other fins, but that was okay. And then I put painter's tape over the blue painted fins and painted the rest of the rocket white, except for the nose cone, of course. Here I am removing the painter's tape from the blue fin. So the paint job came out pretty good, I think. So here we go with cutting out and applying the stickers. This is pretty straightforward, nothing crazy here. One thing I will note was that the big sticker that says Astra on it did not stick to my tube very well, so I would recommend perhaps putting another sticker that's maybe a vinyl sticker underneath it to help it adhere to the tube better, or just making your paint smoother. With this rocket, if it continues to look like that sticker is coming off, I'm probably going to put some Elmer's glue underneath the edges and see how that turns out, because I don't want it to fly off when I launch the rocket. Alright, let's go with cutting out the parachute. Pretty straightforward, cut on the dotted lines. And then you add these stickers which locate where you're going to punch the holes for the shroud lines. Make sure you take out that circle that's in the middle when you're putting these on. I did not do that, and it made it more difficult to punch the holes in the parachute for the shroud line, so don't make that mistake like I did. And then you tie the shroud lines to the parachute. Make sure that you put the shroud lines in the right holes. Don't accidentally skip a hole like I did here, because then you have to cut it and start over again, which decreases the length of your shroud line, which isn't really good for the parachute. And this build is complete.